So, welcome to the third panel of the day. I would like to introduce, I'm not going to introduce, I'm going to invite my fellow panelists who are all incredibly talented curators and directors and long-established careers working in arts. I'm absolutely thrilled to have this amazing panel. Like, stop playing hot potato with the mic. And let's start on the end with Nadia, just to mix it up a little bit, and then we'll zigzag back and forth as the day dictates.
How wonderful to be here. My name is Nadia Jackinsky-Sethi, and I'm a visitor to this beautiful place from the southern part of Alaska in Katchinak Bay, a little town called Homer. I'm a member of the Ninilchik Native tribe. My family is Igloliorte. And I'm somebody who works in the intersection of museum curation, critical writing, art administration. I believe really strongly that our material culture is our most important form of inheritance. And I love doing the work of getting inside museums, shaking things up, and making sure that Indigenous peoples are included everywhere, and especially in places where our art is being held and cared for. At this moment, I am a research affiliate with York University, and I'm able to work with a curating Indigenous Circumpolar Sovereignty program. And I also have about 10 years of experience doing Indigenous philanthropy work, and I strongly love the work that has been done through Inuit Futures. So thank you, Heather, for being such an amazing inspiration to all of us, because there's so much work that needs to be done to make sure that our stories are told within museums and that Indigenous peoples are represented everywhere. So really happy to be part of this panel, and I'll leave it at that for my introduction, but thank you for having me.
Okay. Hi everybody. My name is Jocelyn Piirainen. Achila Jocelyn. Igloliorte. I hope I said that right. I'm still kind of learning my dialect of Inuit. My family's from Igloliorte, Cambridge Bay in Nunavut, but I've also lived down south for most of my life now. I am an associate curator at the National Gallery of Canada in Ottawa. I've been there now about 2 years now. Before that too, I was associate curator at the Winnipeg Art Gallery and its Inuit Art Center, where they opened up. They had the inaugural exhibition with the co-curatorial team of all Inuit, which was so amazing. Heather was on the Inuit. Curator. I'm also very mumuch an emerging artist as well. I still kind of don't consider myself an artist a whole lot, but I do some textile work, bead work, film. I also have done some film programming, worked with some Ottawa film festivals, and that is me so far.
Hello everyone, my name is Arnannguaq from Lynge, and I'm Gadalit and Hatton's mom, born and raised in Gadalit, Greenland, but live and work today in Sápmi, not part of Norway, Kautokeino, where I have now my 7th year work as a director of a Sápmi artist network.
Yeah. Hi. I just want to start to say it's so amazing to be here. We had a crazy travel all the way from Greenland coming here yesterday. My name is Nivi Christensen and I'm the director. I'm the director of Arnannguaq Museum. But I'm so honored to be in a room with so many cool Inuit people working with art. I'm used to be a part of the majority in my country, as a contrary to many of you. But I'm also used to be the minority when we talk culture, when we talk art, when we talk art history. we still tend to be the minority in the discussions. Today we're the majority, and we're going to be that, and that's just so amazing for me to experience. I'm an art historian, taught in Denmark at the University of Copenhagen, and I tend to be the one you call. So when people are like, we tend to be the ones. So we had pieces in the exhibition you talked about before, the Inuit exhibition at the Rameo. Yeah. We're gonna call.
Correct, I call all of you for things all the time. And here you are. And also, may I just say, I've got to single out Jocelyn's earring to glasses game right now. I almost want to give her a round of applause, but it's always great to get together with so many other Indigenous peoples and have a fashion show in your ears.
Shout out to Joy Arcan with Mad Auntie.
So, why you are all on this particular panel is because I think you're all approaching your work in a really in distinct ways that are all, I think, very Inuit. And I was hoping that we could talk about, like, what do you think, how do you bring, I'm going to say that word, that's a made-up word, but everybody knows what I mean. How do you bring your Inuitness to the work that you do? And I'll start in the middle with Arnannguaq.
Yes, thank you. I'm born and raised by two parents, which is artists, and my father was a politician and actually a pedagogue. My mom, who is Danish, but also has been developing art and politics in Oslo, like Norway, back in the times, came to Greenland as this visual artist. That is Danish artist, but very fast he has been like, they use a lot of art in our home. And also in that time when I grew up, it was very political. We had this gathering places called Asivik, where me and many of my friends here, which I have been growing up, has been. And it always been very, very politically highlights where they wanted to change the societies within the garage. And growing up with this kind of society, and also my mom, who is Danish, visual artist, and later she learned the handicraft because she has already sold all her arts to the institution, which is the money came from when she moved to Greenland. So she had to start also because she doesn't have a language here, unfortunately. She unfortunately also learn another language to communicate with each other. Communicate within the societies. Then she learned the handicraft. So she came lightly into society using the spoken words of arts. And later on, she actually moved us to Sápmi when I was quite young, and also using the same voice, where she wanted to make some changes or developing using all her hearts, kind of. So when I was 15, she was demanded to Sápmi, whereas her expertise in Arctic skin came to visible. So we had a lot of Sami art, Sami duaya, which is handicraft, traditional handicraft in Sápmi. She also took us for a travel. We were 15, we moved to Sápmi, and we really grew up with this kind of artistry and the politics and how to change the societies. And it's a very new way to do it, but after I was 15 years and moved to Norway, it was it was kind of ruined because of the colonization, also the Asivik system and the meaning of Asivik, but in the Sápmi they had the same question. So I bring my Inuitness trying to figure out how to cooperate and how to cooperate between the artists and the societies, but also the everyday life kind of. So I have been creating a lot of different kind of ways to figure out how to find a way to system, yes. But the Inuitness is come different kind of interdisciplinary thoughts, but also not exclude politics from the arts. Using art as a tool is maybe one of the biggest, how do you say it, my biggest thing is actually using art as a tool to different kind of ways. So yeah, mainly things, that's kind of my Inuitness in my work. Very partially explained.
Thank you. I think that's a great starting point. Nivi, I see that you've got notes. I was with all my this Scandinavian / indigenous friends, and they all have these remarkable tablets, and I've become an evangelist of the remarkable tablet as well. So please, Nivi, I see that you have notes.
Remarkable notes. Before coming here, I wrote down translatable as a thing, because I really think that we often consider this thing about having to translate work across languages as a problem, or as in Galashinat it often becomes this huge issue that you have to do because it's the political right thing to do to translate stuff into Inuit and Galashinat and into Danish and English if possible. But actually honoring that and trying to make things translatable and understandable across has made me a much better scholar, has made me a much better curator. Trying to actually from the beginning work across, trying to work with different kinds of people as receivers of whatever we do has been like this leading thing that we've been working at with the art gallery where we work. And then I think also to me, honesty is really important. Not to, like we always laugh of whatever mistakes we make, right? As Inuit, we constantly laugh. When we fall, we laugh. When we slip on the ice and almost break our legs, we laugh at each other. And I think that laughter can make it easier to be honest. And I think in our gallery we really try to be honest, also with the stuff that we don't know. And that's really difficult, a really different thing from the European Danish way of thinking that you should always, you should only say stuff if you can make people believe that you know what you're talking about. You should never be mistaken. You should never say anything that people don't understand or I hate it. But that thing about wanting honesty and wanting and to be honest about your mistakes and where you don't know anything or where everything lacks, I really love how we can internalize that at the institution or where I work as a sort of guiding line. But I really think to me that's something that I've been given. Is that an answer?
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Jocelyn?
Yeah, so I kind of, sort of fell into curating. I didn't, go to school, specifically for it in any programs. Luckily nowadays, there's a lot of, younger curators being able to go through, museology courses and etc. I kind of fell into curating, and it was really something that I learned through doing. But then also I was able to collaborate a lot with other Inuit. My approach to curating that way and ensuring that the Inuitness kind of comes from that collaboration with community members, with other, getting knowledge from elders, from people back in my own community, I really, have been able to work with, Takaluk Partridge, Lakaluk Williamson Bathory on some projects now, Arnannguaq, as well. So it's always been just learning from them and really really seeing and hearing from them too, of their experiences. Yeah. I was gonna say something else too, but it's now gone.
I'm gonna put a pin in the how you got started question for next, because you started to get there. I was like, you worked at a film festival, but we'll get to that in a moment. Nadia.
So when I'm thinking about what is Indigenous curation or how do I approach curation, I agree with you. It's a lot about collaboration because we are surrounded by Indigenous people who are absolutely brilliant. And it's not necessarily just those who've gone to art school, but our elders are incredible, our youngers are incredible. When you're an Indigenous curator, you recognize that Indigenous brilliance and you try to bring it with you to every project that you build. When I'm building projects, I'm so lucky that I get to work with incredible people, and many of them are here in this room, but that's the only way you can make projects that are magic, is when you have the artists that have the knowledge and the people that show up, so we all just kind of do it together. I think it's incredibly important when you're building projects that you include community engagement as like a focus, because when you have those projects that take place around your exhibit, the workshops that bring in youth and feeding people, that's really when you get to have the storytelling and what you put up on the walls in a museum space. Maybe that doesn't matter as much as the conversations that take place around it, perhaps. So a lot of what I'm doing is trying to help bring forward community members who maybe are not as well known outside of our communities, and to share their beautiful things with the public through building exhibits. And I'm also thinking a lot about how do I share the beautiful lands that we live on, and how can we give back to our landscapes and lands. So something I'm thinking about now, I don't know that I've got there yet, but what is land-based curation? What does that look like, and how can I help to honor that? So a lot of my research is taking place by visiting with community members, going out and visiting artists and participating in making, but I also spend a lot of time camping with my family, harvesting with my family, and that inspires so much of the work that I do, because our art forms are intimately tied to our landscapes, and you get to know that, and you can bring that out when you spend time in community. So when I'm building projects, I want to think about how do I bring others with me outside and create those experiences. I also love materials, and I brought a basket with me from home, and I'm going to pass it around while we're talking, just so we can look at something else besides ourselves too. So I'm going to pass it around because our materials, as we were talking about earlier today, they are alive, and there's a lot of magic in materials as simple as grass or rocks. So I'm going to pass around a couple of baskets that I brought.
That is awesome. And while you were doing that, I'm going to riff off of something that you said early in your statement there, Nadia, and let it kind of come back this way. Is you talked about not just in being in relation, but also about in making spaces more Inuit. And so, Jocelyn, I feel like I know what your answer is going to be, but like, what is something that you did inside of a gallery or a museum space that was like a very Inuk way to change the space?
Well, yeah, so I worked at the Winnipeg Art Gallery in Kamloops, and yeah, one of the Inuit future students, I was able to mentor them and help them curate a show in their space.
I think Akka is here somewhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, they were here.
Yes. They'll be on a panel later. Late, whatever. Yeah, no, I was able to mentor them, and really in that mentorship as well, it was a really wonderful experience. It was, their first show too, their very first exhibition that they curated. They were able to go through the WAG's collection, the very expansive collection that they have of Inuit art, and come up with a really wonderful exhibition. And that was presented at the during the last Inuit Studies Conference in Winnipeg. But yeah, again, the experience of just going through the collection with them, really just letting them kind of do what they wanted as well. And it was really, again, kind of myself then advocating for them on, in speaking with the other gallery members then, and speaking with my coworkers then, about, ensuring the WAG staff then that, this exhibition is truly, what they want. It's their vision. We have to, help them bring it to fruition. That was really my part then in everything. So I let Acha kind of do what they wanted.
And they're going to be on a panel tomorrow or the next day as well, talking about that project. But I think that what you're saying is so important, is that, like, as an Inuk, that when you're making space for someone who is more emerging or like newer to the institution, that you also see yourself in like an advocacy role. That you're like, we are here to make sure that their vision and their experience goes well. I think that's a very Inuk way to do it. Very junior colleague for sure.
And then also, just ensuring that they're feeling comfortable too in that space. And, being in a large institution, and especially, now that I'm at the National Gallery too, which is even a very large institution. It's just ensuring that there's a comfortableness there, and that that support is there as well.
Yeah, I can directly go to our 10 years anniversary productions this year, because it's elements of it. It's the Dine has 23 interdisciplinary professional artists in the network. And then within the 10 years anniversary, we really wanted to show how the indigenous way of working is quite interdisciplinary. And for us it has been very, very important, because almost every indigenous community is a very small community in a very far away spaces. And how are we going to work with artists and develop the artists come from these small communities? We have to gather in the interdisciplinary within the arts. That's really important for what I have learned growing up as a Inuk. But bring it to Sápmi, where there's a lot of professional artists within the professions. It's how they think and how they always also, not always, but often work quite alone. In this 10 years anniversary, we had a lot of question about the Duchi Daita, between Duchi Daita. Daita is art in Sápmi community, and Duchi is traditional handicraft. And we have a lot of questions within trying to figure out how to box it in the Western situation of what is what. But we are very clear in our voice, especially in Sápmi, what is what. It's not a thing you put in the boxes. So within the 10 years anniversary, we did this exercise, how will you call it, to present how you're going to present Duchi Daita within the artist voice itself. That was really, really cool. We have two big productions where actually one of the biggest visual artists, Nadia, from one group, which also has been represented visual art in Venice, but she using her visual arts, gathering the interdisciplinary artists, and then they make a production. And it was so powerful, and we have never seen using like Duchi, like traditional garments, as it actually been used the whole life as a useful thing. But in this context, a new way of showing art using this kind of elements was so incredible, beautiful. It was like also the traditions. In this Soinegabum, Soinid is the grass. You also use it. We have it in Inuit too, that we using it like a mix, or we're using it like this grass, a special grass we have in our Arctic. In that performance, they uses this Arctic as an element to tell the whole story about the performance. And they were actresses, there were photographers, there were choreographers, there were musicians doing this performance, and all did this in indigenous voices. We have to bring it to Canada once, just to say it. And the other one was using, we challenged Duayat, the designer in our interdisciplinarity. One we had already had Madame Zara, which was in visual arts, and Suinet, who you were in Venice, you saw how she uses the involves of reindeer. And this is also something that the living things making art and how to present art was this amazing, beautiful production where the interdisciplinary telling the same story. That's the uniqueness, I think, in this creation. I told myself. The other one was using like Ducci. The designer made avant-garde. She made this big jubilee using the same elements as we use in different kind of. You see this is a lasso band where the reindeer herders using for catching. They have this special plastic. But then the designers, he made the whole outfit with just using this kind of band. Was amazing. And the old Sami man went in and he saw this because he made the butterfly with this, using this material. And he ordered it, and then he came to the next exhibition where he actually used it. That's the transformation. I really think that's so cool. But also using this, where we are, we live in Arctic part where it's very cold in world again. It can be up to minus 50 degrees in the winter. And in small communities, you either have these spaces, within the Sami art, there is very demand. So everyone often calls us to come to Sápmi to see the art we're actually exporting out. We don't have our own spaces in Norway. We don't have our art galleries. Everything is national institution of Norway acting. So it's also important to us to find solutions within our societies to show the art. So we normally work with the museums, with the schools, with the university, with all the spaces we can have in this smaller community to show the arts. You have been there. You have been there a lot. So this is kind of way of Inuitness, like using all the resources, also within the art, think interdisciplinary, because it's not one discipline. As you said, you work with architecture, you also been Mark. So that's the interesting thing. I think it's a very indigenous way of thinking, but Inuitness thinking also how you build up communities. We're using a lot of how you work in a fence when the reindeer herders work, They work and they have to totally have control of each other to make it work without any lessons. You do this and you do this. Everyone can. And that's how also we think of this network of arts institutions. It's the same way. We have to to develop each artist, you have to think big. So in this kind of occasion, the 10 years productions, you have to go in and look at it. I hope there was a picture of it, but I don't think so. Yeah, but this is kind of way thinking interdisciplinary in the small communities, and then also finding somebody who works within the administration, finding solutions for the artists, which is also very unique within our artist network. But yeah, interdisciplinary production, using traditional knowledge to gain new ways of presenting traditions. That's really my hallelujah moment here.
I don't know if we're doing it. So because we're still in the process of breaking down an institution. We're still in the process of, we inherited a very colonial institution, quite young. It's only turning 20 years, the museum, next year. But it was a former private collection by a mixed marriage Danish entrepreneur who owned the whole city, acquired a ton of stuff, decided he wanted his collection exhibited, opened the gallery. You know the story, right? We have it everywhere. And then at some point, a position came up, and I was like, now I've used 10 years complaining about that institution, and now I actually have the power to do something about it. So I applied for the job, and at the beginning I was alone. And then we are now 4 people We're a huge institution now. But the thing about us trying to, I feel like it's a very non-Inuk way to actually go into an institution trying to tear it down. And that's basically what we're doing. And we're not in the process of building it up yet, I feel. I feel we're still falling a little bit behind, even though some of the projects that we do tend to build upon that. But we're still in this process of just making space for ourselves. And that's, to me, that becomes like a little bit of a contradictory to the Inuk way, at least in Qinnirajaattuq, to do it that way, because it demands space. Right now we're doing like, move around, like tearing all the paintings by white people down. That's what we're doing.
Okay, so
Changing works.
So let's build on that. So if there was like some big change that you could just like make happen, what would be one big impactful change for, you know, like Holodaw institutions that you would like to see? Anybody can jump in. Dine's face went, what do you guys? What would you love? One big thing.
We actually do a very big thing now, which is a sensual thing. Very short. We have this. We came to this point that institution has to finally find that so we can work. But we work as a big European project where is Birgiume. Birgiume is a Sami language, which is also called like survival. So this project is a survival through art. That's actually the right translated word. But we actually got funded, so this is amazing. Just last year we got quite a lot of money to fund this. But this interesting part is that it's going to help us finding a way to work with the university in Sami. And it's also funding courses to agencies and producers, which we really, really need. So these courses is going to give us the opportunity in the bright future that we're going to have education made by us in the university. So that's the big news I have.
That's a big one. That's awesome. Nadia?
I'm thinking of lots of really big things, but I would like to see, in the United States, we don't have dedicated funding for Indigenous arts, like I know you have here in Canada. So we need dedicated funding for all of our Indigenous arts. We need money for Indigenous arts residencies. We need more funding for all of the repatriation projects that need to happen. We especially need funding for hiring more Indigenous arts curators, because it is the case that there are still very few of us working in institutions. So we need to be able to have more gatherings like this too, so we can all network and know each other and build up a stronger force of Indigenous peoples who are telling our own stories and doing this for ourselves. So there's not just one thing, there's lots, but I'm also thinking about, personally I'm thinking about some of the land back movements that need to happen throughout Alaska in particular, and it's the case that I'm seeing many private collections that are not being given back to Indigenous peoples, and sacred sites that are still in under control of people who don't care about our communities or our way of being. So that's something I'm thinking about, but not one thing.
That's a pretty good list. For starters.
Do you have any specific?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I mean, kind of just adding to this too. The hiring more staff, more Indigenous staff, more Inuit staff, and especially in those larger institutions, like hiring more Inuit at kind of higher level positions.
You're so spoiled though, Jocelyn. Jocelyn works at the National Gallery, which now has 3 full-time Inuit employees and multiple other indigenous peoples. And at like 3 different levels of curatorial and leadership. It's very exciting.
But we need more.
I'm not gonna fight you on that. Agreed.
I think in the Greenlandic context, we need to give more power to the artists in our communities. We have huge problems with financing, with collaborations, it's still really difficult to work as an artist in Qinnirajaattuq, and I really want the power. I remember some of the ones saying that we need to acknowledge the work of artists as a crucial part of society, and we need more money to that sector. We have money, but it's difficult for the artists to live an everyday life, and I think we really have a problem with considering that you do that as a byproduct, or you do that as something like you do a different thing. And in our society, we have a lack of educated people in general. So all the artists who are educated they tend to sip into work full time in different positions instead. And it's because you get a salary, you get a structure, you get and you're sucked into it because it becomes so easy, and we lack them So I really want to do something about that. I really want somebody to do something about that. And when I say somebody needs to do something within the art sector, it tends to fall in my chair.
You're like, why won't somebody? Oh, it's me.
And then I wanted to say we need a gallery. Because I'm a municipality, it's a city museum. I work at a city museum. And we want something national taking care of the art in Greenland. It doesn't have to be a national gallery, but we need somebody to take care of it, as a national institution.
Love that. There are plans underway for a major institution to finally be built in Nunavut, which I think we're all very excited about. But I think it's just we need more. Absolutely. All of our culture is all over the world. I've never been to a museum anywhere on the planet that didn't have Inuit collections. It's like Australia, a little house museum in Hamilton, everywhere has Inuit culture. I think this would be a great point, now that we've got about 20-ish minutes left before the podcast, to turn it over to the audience. So Laura's going to come up and take a microphone, and please raise your hands and ask our panelists questions.
Just itching to ask all these questions. I'm like 5, but I'll keep it down. I really enjoyed hearing about how other curators are breaking down hierarchies within an institution, and I see that across the board, where we're working collaboratively and community-based. I hear that everywhere, not just up north. I love that we all share that. One of the things I worry about, and we all talk about, is the idea of tokenism within institutions, where they'll hire someone who's not necessarily community-minded, or even has the worldview that keeps you from. So there's Indigenous folks that have real barriers and cannot get into these institutions. They always find Indigenous folks that are very, they're really brown bodies that are upholding white supremacy, just to be really blunt. And I'm just wondering, even Cree culture, we're not a confrontational people. Some may say otherwise, it's not true. But I'm just wondering, how do we gently take people accountable for their actions, or how do we address that? Because I think for the most part, we just pretend it's not happening, and we'll just talk amongst each other. I mean, there's networking where I like to call it post-colonial mapping in institutions, where we network and say, oh, don't go to that person, he's a total racist, or don't even try to get a job there because you're going to hit a glass ceiling, so don't waste your time. We all do that, I think. But I'm really talking about now that institutions are hiring more of us, those bad seeds, because they end up hurting our own people. I think the most, at least in my experience, because I've had that experience in Saskatchewan. So yeah, it's a hard question. Sorry.
We have bad people everywhere.
Yeah, I know.
Like, and I don't think that in Indigenous communities it's worse than in other communities or in other areas. So I think it's not a solution, but I think we just have to acknowledge that we can't remove all the people who are doing things in a way that we don't accept or we consider improper. We just have to deal with that because it's a fact, and we're too few to actually angling that. But in a panel like this, I feel that's one of the things I wrote down before coming here. It's so empowering being here. And what we tend to do within the Indigenous community is also empowering each other. And if we can do that, we can minimize the power of the ones who are doing it in the wrong way, I think. So I really want to emphasize not using too much energy on whatever is bad and actually putting the energy where we can empower each other and where it, and that's the other part of your question or the other part of what you're saying, right? Because that means that we have to talk to each other saying like, no, don't go there. Use your energy over there instead. And I think that's just, that means that we can actually change something because we have to gather in groups at conferences and stuff, to gather in groups to be able to empower each other.
I was going to say something along the same lines. For Alaska, we have a group that we call the Alaska Native Museum Sovereignty Group, and we are kind of a support system for when there are problems that museums are misrepresenting Alaska Native people. There's this group of people that we can get together and we've got each other's backs, and we can tell a museum when they're doing something that's wrong or incorrect. And because there's a critical mass of us, it's safety in numbers, and then you can make a difference. And the other thing you can do when you have a number of people is you can help to fundraise. And if there's a project that's not working and maybe it needs more support, you can fundraise, create a new project, and bring it to a museum so that they must do better. Because one of the excuses why museums say, we couldn't do this because we didn't have funding. If you can bring the funding with you, you can bring forward your own agenda and your own ideas and make the museum change. So I think that's a good way to do things.
So I just finished a bit of my education and graduated recently. And I've come back to my community in a different way now with that education. And I'm finding that there are these specific needs and that curation is one of them, as well as arts education. And I'm curious about approaches to that when it seems like that's what the community needs and wants. And I don't know if I'm necessarily someone to do that, but I'm being offered these opportunities. And if I'm being offered them, I feel like it's my job to turn around and make space for more Indigenous peoples. So I'm wondering what sort of strategies is useful for someone learning those spaces and learning how to do it. Just by doing stuff.
That's a great question. Thank you, Erin. I mean, I think part of it could be a little bit what Nadia was saying earlier about like figuring out curating on the land. Or like in many of our communities, there aren't, like formal gallery spaces, but there are community centers, there are halls, there are events, so there's always, I think, an opportunity for that kind of work. Please, Nadia.
Yeah, I would say, Erin, you're doing it. What you do is you show up, you watch, and then you do the work that needs to be done. You help find artists, you bring food, you do the design work. Erin worked with me on a project called Salmon Culture, and she came in and she designed the whole space in the first gallery that we put together pretty much, because she was just there and she's like, oh yeah, we're gonna do it like this. So you're doing it already, Erin. That's the way you do it. You show up and then you just try and you experiment, and if you make a mistake, you learn from that, so you just keep going, but you're doing it.
Nadia, I'd love to hear more about Indigenous philanthropy. Please, I'm excited.
Yeah, so historically, Indigenous people have not had the privilege of being in control of wealth in the sense of Western wealth, money, and it's often an uncomfortable topic too. Like asking for money can be really uncomfortable, but we're in this period where there's a lot of Indigenous philanthropists who are growing, and so there's like Indian Collective in the United States, and I don't know which other ones, but Indigenous philanthropy is not based on the same system of philanthropy elsewhere, but it's thinking about collective abundance and generosity. It's thinking about providing funds based on Indigenous values, and it's making sure that we get to be involved in the process of who gets money, who gets funded, and why, because typically we haven't been in those positions of power through philanthropy, but that's changing. So when you get to decide who gets funded and why, we get to have more of our own values represented in museums or just kind of generally. So if you are a funder, I don't know, are you a funder? No. Okay, well, if there are funders out there, pay attention to what you're funding and make sure you include Indigenous peoples on your advisory boards, because there's a different way to write grants or to ask for funding, and sometimes you need to make sure that you include Indigenous peoples on the panel, and we need to be included on the staff in philanthropy organizations as well. So I don't know if I have anything else to say about that, but
I love it.
yeah.
And Nivi said that she'd show up for anything, is what she put her on her panel. Are there any other last questions from the group?
Thank you so much for this panel and for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us. My question kind of goes a bit with the first question and also things that you've shared. I wanted to know, as also a member of, strategically underrepresented group, and we were talking about like tokenism and how there's a need for more, and I think sometimes the mandate is really big on the shoulder of the few who are there. And so I kind of wanted to also continue the conversation about where you put your energies and and talking more about the collaborations that you were mentioning. What is supporting your practice? How do you see sustaining your practices with exactly those big mandates and big dreams and all the work to do? How do you see longevity?
For us in SAPME is to balance both the economic but also human resources to it. In Norway, we just went through a Truth and Reconciliation report came out last year, and also from a bit of inspiring for the Truth and Reconciliation year is the answer more resources and more time. So that's really the easiest answer, that we have to have more economic resources to build up capacity in each indigenous community. And because of art as a very important tool to continue the work we do for self-governance, it's really more resources, economic and time. And also more network like we do here, because it's so necessary. And also the answer might be also to always see there's in our communities in north part of Norway, we have been feeling quite long building up these institutions that we did. First it was only the artists, and then we came in, but then the networking towards this actually the past few years has been really put a lot of weight out of our shoulders, because we had so networking connect us to other indigenous societies and give us more time and resources to build up what has been taken away from each community.
All the things Dina said. And then to me it's really important that we don't stretch how quickly we need to grow or how fast we need things to go, because we also need to be able to have the human resources to be able to grow in the right amount of time. And that means that we need the space for people from outside the indigenous communities to also stay away a little bit. We need the place to sort of grow in the right amount of time, because we can't go from one day to the other to become something huge. We need to grow in the right pace that fits within our whatever we work with. Otherwise it becomes something sort of, I think it becomes not grounded, and we need it to be grounded. We need it to be grounded within our indigenous communities, within our institutions, so for that to happen, we need to have a growing pace all the time. I feel like the title of the conference fits very well to that, with the ripples going, and we need them to go. We need the funding, we need it to be growing each year, but we don't need it as like a one thing and now it's there. We need it to sort of expand.
Yes, and shout out to Jackinsky-Sethi Partridge and Christensen for coming up with the title for the symposium together. Please, Jocelyn, sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just gonna kind of add to that too. Like, I've been having in my job where I am, the department I'm in, it's the Indigenous Ways of Decolonization department, and you know, of course, we've been having internally so many different conversations about what that means. You know, what does a decolonized institution really look like? And yeah, like it's such an ongoing conversation, because there really is no institution right now that is decolonized. So we don't know what that looks like. And yeah, it's going to take that time. It's not going to be immediate. We're not going to come up with the answers like tonight, you know. So yeah, well, maybe here, but yeah, no. To what Nivi was saying too. Yeah, it's going to take time, and of course this kind of work does take time too. Because I mean, yeah, it takes a toll on you as well, and yeah, it really is up to the individuals. It's up to myself to know, yeah, exactly where to put my energies too, and to kind of again know when I'm being or starting to even be burned out as well. So yeah, it's a balance. It really is, and yeah, I don't know if that really answers it and or helps, but yeah.
I was also having burnout on my mind. I was like, how do you preserve yourself from burnout? I think like many. With the eagerness and the willing and the wanting things to move, it's very easy to burn out, especially in this field. And so I also wanted to know, like, how do you preserve your energy? Like, do you have tips to share to people? Like, what is, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think, I was going to add to that having that support around you of a group of people that you can turn to and say, and like talk about things. Then to talk about vent, you know. Yeah, having a good support system, support group, I guess, of friends, people outside of institutions, your community, your family, that sort of thing. Yeah, that definitely helps.
I totally agree. I feel that being the only BIPOC person in a space is really challenging, let alone being the only Inuk in a space or something. And so, people have given me good advice over the years to like, just because you're the only person who can do something, like they're like, we don't have an Inuk, we need an Inuk to say something. It doesn't mean you have to do it, and also do the job you're paid for first, and do the, if you don't have decolonization in your job title, it's not your job to do it all the time, so that work can be spread around the institution, but like, do the thing that is in your job description before you do all the extra stuff on top of it, and make sure that you're like, getting compensated for the things that you're supposed to be doing.
But I wouldn't be here if I followed that.
I know, take my advice. I never do that.
No.
But I mean, like, to avoid the burnout, like when you were feeling like you were burnt out, like prioritize the things that are.
But it's the thing in my job description that makes me gives me a burnout. It's not the things that when I travel, when I meet with you guys, when I go around, when I do all the extra stuff that I feel is actually changing the world. that's when I feel like I gain power. So I don't know.
But what I will say about that though, Nivi, is that your bullshit tolerance grows as you gain an experience. And so folks up here on this stage who've been working for a decade and who have been in these spaces, I know it's a lot of learning experience, but like not everything needs to be a learning experience. But I think that it should be on people who have more experience and have done more of the work, because it is not as hard and it doesn't weigh as much on us as it does on people who are starting out and who are being way underpaid to do this heavy lifting kind of work. So I'm speaking to someone. If you're an artist from center, if you're an emerging person, if you're on a contract, you know what I mean? Like, don't decolonize on a contract. Full-time salaries and benefits decolonization is what I'm saying. Evie got a comment in the back.
I will also comment on choose your battles.
Yes.
Because everything we do, it is a battle. Like, if you want to do the work as we do, it's a battle, and just choose your battles wise. And if you want to fight, team up your mates and then fight with other people, because it's going to demand that.
Maybe find someone with a good bullshit filter.
You can make friends with Nivi and Heather, and then they're going to help you.
This is Nivi with the filter.
Yeah,
I think there's a question at the back, Evie.
No, I just want to make a comment. I'm very happy to see Inuit indigenous curators, and there's a big difference when I go to a symposium or museum or art gallery or something, and there is a huge difference between a non-indigenous person who prepared the space and an indigenous person who prepared it. Like non-indigenous and indigenous, there's a big difference. And even the material that are chosen and how they're chosen, how they're presented. It made a huge difference, because often me and my students go and see the art pieces, or I'll go there to throat sing. And I can feel a huge difference, especially when I've seen Dr. Lick's pieces. You feel right at home when she's presented it. And so, as tough as it is, as challenging as it is, because there's only a few number of you, I think I really applaud you. Thank you. Even though it doesn't seem like a big deal, it is a big deal on how you present our culture, and the way it speaks is how you prepared it. And I think that's very important.
Thank you, Nakumi.